Good morning, everybody. Yes, Thursday has broken again. Here we are.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, indeed. Happy Thursday, Pumelele. How are you?
Happy Thursday, baby.
Are you good?
I am feeling good.
Excellent. Nina
Feeling
Simone
good.
style.
This is a great cup of coffee.
I made it myself.
It may
with
not
love.
be in a paper cup, but I love it.
Good. That's all I want. I strive to please. I aim to please. All right. So we've got a lot to do
You've
today.
made a good one here.
Oh, thank
Good
you.
cup of
So,
chai.
yes, I can do that. Listen, this is nothing compared to what Pumi's learned to do
The
this week.
multi-talented Gareth.
Please, nothing. You know what Pumi's learned to do this week? You know how we often talk about self-improvement on this show? We talk about how everybody's trying to get better at doing things. Well, you're leading the way. I mean, so Phumi is leading the way. She learned how to make feta cheese this week. She went to a cheese making course.
I actually went to a cheese making course like 2 weeks ago. The day of the final, the day of the Rugby Cup final.
Oh,
you know
wow.
how that's going to be our reference point for a lot of
discipline.
things.
Okay.
That morning, I went to a cheese making course. Me and all the Dannies arrived in Edenvale.
Yeah.
At this wonderful place. And I went because my mother had paid for the course. And then she was like, she couldn't go because...
You're
So
not going
I
to waste
went,
it. Yeah.
You're not going to waste that.
No.
Like, oh, I'll go.
Right.
Surprisingly, the Dannies were nice. And the
And
course
you had
was
fun?
worth it. It was.
So what you can make feta?
I can make feta. That's all I can make right
But
now.
there's another course you can go for
To make mozzarella.
mozzarella. Okay, so if you can do that, then those are the only cheeses you need to be able to make.
But I think that's like the base.
That's amazing.
I think that's the base of the cheese making world. Once you get
I-
those two right, also because you can flavor it and you can do. So this
Yeah.
week, I got home early a couple of days ago. I had electricity. I had all this time to myself. And I thought,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? I thought, this is my time.
Cheese making.
Make it in the house. Because, going to a place, learning how to do something, you don't quite know if you can replicate it. You have to do it in your house by yourself,
I think that's
step by
amazing.
step, and see.
Amazing.
And now I am just like,
So you did it on your own. Put me the cheese
and
maker.
it is good, man. It was good, and this is where this thing is like yielding results that actually I hadn't even thought about, right? Because as we live in the Cyril economy,
We have to learn to make our own stuff. Plus, the stuff you can make yourself, you can be sure not to put in all kinds of dangerous ingredients.
what's in it.
There's no processed shit that you buy at the shop. It's probably better for you in the long run, right?
You know what's in
Yeah.
it. You are in control. You are
Yeah.
in control.
You know
of
that joke,
everything.
right? So now you put me the cheesemaker. But there's this joke about this Greek guy. His name is I don't know, Taki. So Taki's sitting in the boatyard having a little cup of coffee, and someone comes up to him and goes, "Hey, Taki, how are you?" He goes, "Oh, I'm all right." He says, "What's wrong?" He goes, you see those houses there on hill? I build those houses with my own hands. All of those houses, I build them, I plaster them, I paint them, I put the roof, everything. Do they call me Taki the house builder? No. Says, "You have feta cheese from the cafe down here." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I make that feta cheese. I make it with my own hands. I learn how I make the best feta cheese. Do they call me Taki the cheesemaker? No." Because you see those boats in the harbor over there. I build each boat with my hands. Look, my hands are calloused from the boats I make. Do they call me Taki the boat maker? No. But you fuck one goat.
Well, I can assure you, my friend, that mistake
You're going to be,
I won't be making.
you being Phumi the cheesemaker.
I'll remain the cheesemaker. Thank you.
I think it's great. I think
Thank
it's
you
lovely.
very much.
Oh, good.
Francois here says, Good Morning from South Sudan.
Yes, he's in South. We have listeners all over the world, and Francois is doing a stint of work in South Sudan, the youngest country in the world. I've got a friend in South Sudan too.
Me too.
So
She
look at
sends
us.
pictures.
There we
She
go.
sends
See?
pictures every day, and I'm just like, girl.
That's the youngest country, and look at us. Between us, we all have
Everybody's
friends.
moving to South
Yeah, look
Sudan.
at this.
Everybody's moving to South Sudan. It's December.
Opportunity there must be better than opportunity here. That's saying something.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it's a war zone.
Because it's a new country.
Listen, I got to ask you
It
about
needs
this.
a Taki, the boat maker.
Not the goat fucker, the boat maker.
And the house builder.
So I saw this video on Instagram, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? So I still don't know entirely, but it's in a church. What they do is they've rigged up some man or woman, it's hard to tell, dressed up as Jesus on like a zip line. And Jesus is going to come from the back of the church. But they've miscalculated, and he ends up like on the chairs and like pushing people out of the way because the angle of the zip line and the weight hasn't been calculated properly. It's just, and the funny thing is, like, whatever's happening in this church,
maybe they're rehearsing for like the nativity.
a show.
The nativity.
You think?
For when the angel Gabriel.
You think?
Yeah, maybe.
I hope
Maybe
that's
that's what we saw.
I hope that's right, because I see a lot of really, really weird people all lifting their hands and participating in some sort of what looks like an actual service
Veneration
or
of
a prayer or something. But just watch this, because I see this and I suddenly think, wow, in some ways I'm a little jealous that I'm not so credulous, that I couldn't just buy into this. I think life must be so much easier when you just believe everything, and you want to believe everything. So you just buy into all of it. And it must be like life must be simpler, right? Must be slightly more satisfying in some ways.
well.
And then I wonder why I overthink things, or why I get so upset when I see stories in the news, world affairs. I think it must be so simple. Like if I just believed the guy on the zip line was actually Jesus. And
Show us the video.
Watch this video. All right, so the guy is now let's go of the, and then he comes down on the zip line. And then he realizes and the whole thing is just very messy.
I'm telling you, it's
very
like
messy.
It's I'm telling you, it's a play
Do you think so?
in a church.
Okay, well,
It's like
people in the audience seem very into it for a
Yes.
rehearsal or for a play.
uh,
Very into it.
Do you hear the lady there, Spiritus Sanctus?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, in nomine Patris et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus.
It's in there. Although I don't know if it gets. I think human nature is about complicating things. I think no matter how simple you think things
God.
might be, I think it's who we are.
You think?
I think it's in the human nature to complicate it and look for everything outside of. I don't think we're, no matter what, even when you believe in whatever higher power,
Yeah.
you still, it's just in your human nature. It's not easy to surrender. It's not easy to just say, he's in control, or
Yeah.
she's in control,
Well,
or they're in control. It's not. You just,
well,
you still grapple with all of this stuff.
I just think my life would be much easier if you just buy this shit. Anyway, I see the international news is still full of Israel and Gaza. And actually today we're going to, well, before they kick him out of the country, we thought it would be a good, and that's what I think is going to happen, is we're going to speak to the Israeli ambassador, because we might not have an Israeli ambassador to South Africa in about 2 weeks if it carries on like this.
It's going to be.
So we're going to speak to him a little later. That's going to be interesting. Going to speak to someone from the Institute of Security Studies as well on all the issues that are going on in the world. And her name is Jasmine Opperman. Also very, very interesting. She was provincial head of the Eastern Cape and engaged in senior management liaison, inclusive premiers, MECs, and ministers. So, I mean, just to talk to her a little bit about the Eastern Cape too would be interesting, because that province is a clusterfuck. So find out how that all worked or didn't work, as the case may be. Got so much to talk about. And then, I don't know if you saw this, but a single blue diamond sold for 800 million rand.
No.
One single stone.
Where?
Now,
How
Phumi,
big?
let me just ask you
There's so
something.
many things.
800 million rand. If I had $1 million, I would be over the moon.
800 million rand.
Imagine digging
Where?
up.
Where was this?
Okay, so here's the whole story.
Give me the story.
Right, because who knows this? You might have something lying in the back garden that you don't know about. So an exceptionally rare blue diamond went under the hammer in Geneva, selling for the equivalent of 800 million rand, making it one of the most expensive diamonds ever sold at auction, weighing 17.61 carats, so bigger than you could put on a ring. The Blue Royal is the largest internally flawless, fancy, vivid blue gem ever to appear for sale in the auction's history. It is the star lot in a series of luxury sales in Geneva this month, which also feature items from movie history, including pearls worn by Audrey Hepburn and Marlon Brando's self-engraved watch.
Wow.
So that's all I've got for you. I can't tell you where they dug it up.
800 million.
800 million, yeah.
Hey.
Let me see if I can find a picture of this thing.
That is a lot of money. Do you think that they're gonna break it apart, this diamond? That they're gonna
I think it's
chip
already
it
been
into
cut.
lots of pieces,
I think it's already been cut.
and then out of their 800 million make a billion, 1.5 billion, selling it
as
off
far
piece
as
by
I can
piece.
tell, it's already been cut, so you can't further cut it up, but it'll form the centerpiece of whatever beautiful piece of jewelry is available. As far as I can tell, this is what it looks like. I mean,
Yay!
it could just as well be
Do we know where it's from?
an aquamarine, if you ask me. I don't know where they dug it up, but possibly, when it comes to these sorts of gems, a lot of them are found in the Indian subcontinent. That's
Whew.
it. But it looks like an aquamarine to me. It doesn't look like a diamond. Maybe a sapphire, but a very light blue sapphire. Sapphires tend to be a lot more dark.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not a bad looking stone. I won't take any of the glory away from it. 800 million, though? 800 million. Just trying to think what you could buy for 800 million. I mean, you could buy any property in South Africa you wanted. Any property you wanted.
Multiple ones.
But, I mean,
you could go to.
But
you
take
could go
your
to
pick. You could go
10 people
find
who aren't even selling their houses.
and you could, but you could also have whatever wine farm you wanted. You could have whatever apartment building you wanted.
But do you remember that place that Mbulelo told us about, which was about that much in Cape Town? Mbulelo told us about a place that cost a ridiculous amount like that. So maybe you could buy half a property in Cape Town.
I mean, this is amazing because Mash Mashinini says, isn't there a house in Cape Town on the market for 700 mil? Having a huge ass house overlooking the ocean or buying a fancy stone. Well, this is the point. All right, so let's do a little fantasy.
I think a person who would spend that kind of money on a fancy stone has a huge ass house.
Probably.
Overlooking a
Well, okay.
Overlooking an
Let's
ocean.
just fantasize for a minute because it's sometimes important.
That's why we buy lotto tickets.
Yeah, exactly. So let's fantasize about this. If you had that stone in your possession, obviously you would sell it. There's no reason to keep that. Even if you have the most beautiful piece of jewelry in the world, you wear it when? When do you put that on? You'd sell it. You would sell it. Come on, Phumi. You don't let me down here. You'd keep it?
Yeah. Look, dude. I cannot. This is beyond my scope of imagining.
Okay,
right?
we're
A
gonna
diamond
try.
that big.
So we're gonna try.
And whether you put it, you see, I'm wearing this little necklace today.
If you had it hanging there,
would I like?
Would you just walk into the studio one morning and it would be hanging on the necklace?
Would I wear like low plunging tops with the
this
necklace,
beautiful diamond?
This diamond.
It does look a little bit like the one from Titanic, doesn't it? Like a little bit.
It also but also this picture doesn't quite do it any kind of justice because it's just like floating on in white space. But like maybe you make earrings.
I don't even know if that's what it really looks like, but I mean, even if let's say it's more beautiful than that somehow, so you wouldn't keep it because I know you and I, we owe money here and there. We've got like real life expenses and shit. There's no way you and I would keep this thing. So I would,
have a child.
yeah, I would immediately sell it. And then
that is the ultimate sinkhole
even if you
for
got
money.
even if you got 500 million for it, let's say the auction didn't go so well. Let's say you got 500 million for it. Okay, so 500 million rand. Now, what are you going to do? What's the first thing you're going to do with that money?
Definitely a big ass house overlooking the ocean.
That's what you where in this country or where in the world? Because you could go anywhere in the world with that money.
You could go anywhere in the world, but I still think I would probably choose the South Coast.
South Coast of KZN. Okay.
Because with that kind of money, you can
sure. You can make it as lovely. Yeah, you can. You don't have to worry about security.
The South Coast is without a doubt one of my favorite places.
I love it. We used to go on holiday there all the time when we were kids.
Still one of my favorite places.
I've got a friend who lives all the way down at Port Edward, and she is as happy as can be.
She
loves it there.
The drive down from Joburg.
Yeah.
I went to Sun City last weekend. I went to see Boys to Men.
And
that drive.
You had your boy band. I went to see Westlife. Between us, we were all boy banded out this week. Jesus.
Talk about nostalgia.
Big time, right?
It was amazing. But that drive out to Sun City.
Yeah.
Just, astounding to me how beautiful this country is in so many different ways, because the drive down to the South Coast is completely different from the drive to Sun City.
Oh, yeah. Oh, completely.
But both of them just breathtaking.
But the best part of the drive to South Coast to KZN is that last part. Because you've got those banana trees and palm trees. I mean, it's like proper tropical and it feels lush. You know what I mean?
My best part down
what
is just coming over that Van Rielen's Pass.
Oh, you like that? Where you see the whole of KZN spread out in front of you?
Listen.
So you saw Boys to Men. Let's just pause for a minute. Because I would have just from a music point of view, I would have probably preferred Boys to Men. I mean, it was great, like, reconnecting with the guys from Westlife and everything. And Ryan would kill me if I don't put up this picture. I met them all backstage. There it is.
Oh, I
quite cool.
I saw this. Did you put this on your?
Yeah.
Yeah. You put this on your.
They sent it to me on Monday. Anyway, it was good to see them. But I think Boys to Men, from a music point of view, I probably would have preferred.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are just unbelievable, right?
Listen,
they really are.
The vocals are still intact.
Mm.
The musicality.
And
they've had a residency.
You don't have to persuade
not a lot
me.
of people know that they've had this residency in Las Vegas. And so the show is also tight,
And they have a direction. It's not just song after song.
Yeah.
There's a story that comes into it. I imagine it's very beginning, middle, end. It's been worked out beautifully.
I mean, they come out, big number, cool high harmony, Boys to Men, and you're in the show.
Mm.
They have an interlude in the middle.
They do it at the Super Bowl?
At the Super Bowl, yeah.
And it was probably a sellout.
Listen, all the hot mamas of like a certain age, we were there, baby.
I should have been there.
The sisters were kitted out.
I'm so annoyed.
I think the whole Super Bowl, probably 20% of the Super Bowl was men.
I really hope that they're sorting Sun City out, because the last time I was there, I was very disappointed with how the place is looking, and it's feeling tacky and it's feeling neglected. It feels like this country. It's like,
I haven't been.
And the road there is just absolutely abominable.
No, the road there was good.
Oh,
the road there was good.
Because I was last there last year and it was not good.
No, the road there was good.
I'm very happy to hear
I used to do that road a lot when we were doing work with the mine. But the road, they also opening up a bit of that road, which I was very happy to see. So there's still some road works on the way there.
But they're working on it, which I'm very happy about. Last time I was there, potholes, bumps, goats.
Yeah, the goats. The goats are still there. The goats and the cows are still there.
You have to watch out.
There's no fence.
No fence. I know people who've been... either in very serious accidents or I've heard stories of people who've been killed on that
Yeah.
road because they've hit cars. and things.
Absolutely.
Very bad.
Look, it's still a very dark road. So
Don't go at
we
night.
did the sensible thing. We drove out kind of
Did you stay there overnight?
midday, and we stayed overnight. Also, you know, in Kwamaritane, which is
It's
just
lovely. It's
there
right
in the
next door.
Pilanesberg, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like,
So-
listen,
Listen, they're doing the Nedbank Golf Challenge there this weekend. Which is why Sun City's back on the radar.
but that's what I was going to say. The last time I was in Sun City, I was gone to the Nedbank.
Oh, did you go?
I used to go quite a
No,
lot.
you were a golf fan.
And then they shifted the dates because of the road to Dubai. They shifted the dates. So now it's in the middle of November, like it's in the middle of exams. It used to be that the golf was the beginning of the December holiday.
Yeah, it was like at
It
the
was
end
the
of
first
November.
weekend in December, and it was
Right.
and it's just nice out there. It's hot.
It is nice out there, but let's get back to so you would have a house on. I just want to explore this a little bit because this is fun. I mean, you know, you probably aren't going to have 800 million in your life, and neither am I. But it's fun to fantasize. So you'd buy a house there. What else would you do? Because you'd have a lot of money left. A house on the south. You could have your dream house. You could build a brand new one with everything you needed in it. You could even have, I mean, you could have a helicopter taking you down there, so you wouldn't have to do the drive if you'd want to with 800 million.
But the drive is nice.
Okay, so you've got lots of money.
Which also means a good car.
You've got a lot of money in the bank still, so go wild. What would you want?
Means a really
What would you want?
good car.
Go on.
I think a Porsche Macan.
Mm.
I really like that car. I really, really like that car. I would get a Porsche Macan.
A little Porsche 2-seater.
No, the Macan, which is the smaller Cayenne. So
I haven't seen that.
It's just a little bit smaller.
Okay, I thought I suddenly started thinking you in a sports car. That could be like quite exciting, but no, it's a sedan. All right. Okay.
I think so. My dad really loves where he's from. You know, I talk about this space a lot. And I would really love to have a proper road out there.
So you'd help like tar the road to where your dad comes from.
Yeah.
In KZN.
And get a proper cell phone mast.
Oh, because they don't have signal there?
Oh, the signal is very bad. Because that's where my dad would go. Like that would be his thing, right? So you have to do something for your family.
And also, like once you've got 800 million in the bank,
you have to do other things. You're
can't
never
just
going
do
to finish
for yourself.
that money. This is the
you
thing
could
that's
never.
like so galling for me about all the money that gets stolen in this country is you actually don't need all that money.
I mean, you could live very happily. I reckon if you did well in South African terms and you weren't trying to invest overseas or buy big companies or, you know, be one of the big players in business in the world. If you were just a contented South African who wanted to live a very, very comfortable life here, you don't even need that money. No. You don't need that much.
No.
Okay, so you would have so much that you'd be doing projects like this.
Yeah, I would have to. I think because here's what I wouldn't want to do is I wouldn't want to have nothing to do.
No, you'd
right?
want to
so
keep
you
working.
Need stuff.
This is the funny thing about people is that everybody has this fantasy of, well, if I had so much cash, I wouldn't work. But that's bullshit. If you don't have something to do, you very quickly spin out of control and things go horribly wrong for you. So you have to have something to do, right?
And here's something that I've always wanted. And years ago, 15 years ago, used to think it's definitely something that I could do. I've always wanted to build a school.
Look at you and your humanitarian and philanthropic
That's not a
project.
this thing.
Pure philanthropy,
me,
though.
Like a school.
Where would you build this? Also in sort of KZN? Because that's where the need is greatest. Where would you put it?
I'd want to put it here in Joburg. But here's the thing. I would like it to be a dual language, right? A Zulu English school.
Okay, well, you can learn in either. And they teach both, and they teach all the subjects in both. And what would you charge people, or would it be free?
Well, with 800 million.
You don't need it.
You don't need it, but it would be some kind of fee-based.
Yeah, you can't, if you give
because
someone
you can't
something
give
for,
it away.
If you give someone something for nothing, they never value it, right?
It has to still, it has to still feel like you're part of.
I feel like such a piece of shit by comparison with you because I haven't thought about building schools or tarring roads.
So what would you do? What would you do with the money, Gareth?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I
You-
mean, I'm obsessed with drawing designs for buildings and things, and I would build some of these dream designs, some of them to sell.
To scale or
Yeah,
like
to scale. No, to scale. And I'm not talking about like massive fantasy palaces. I'm just talking about I want to build beautiful houses, but I don't want to actually be an architect because if you're an architect, you have to do whatever work is required.
But the
So
drawings you
you'd have
make
to
are
do-
quite intricate.
Yeah, I know, and those are the things I'd like. I'd love to make those things come to reality. So I would just buy up properties, build these houses, and then sell them for fun. And really make these incredible places come to life. That would be part of it. I would do a lot to protect our historical heritage in this country. I would buy up areas.
There's humanitarian
Yeah,
work.
I'd buy up areas where there are battlefields or old sites that things have happened in South Africa, and I would protect them from the ravages of people and of the environment. So I'd like to, go and conserve important sites. And so, I mean, King Shaka's burial place is like a parking lot in Stanger, and it's just very, to me, that's just distasteful. I'd buy that up and I'd make it a much nicer thing. I would go into our cities and I'd restore buildings that were damaged and broken and being left to rack and ruin. The Palace of Justice in Pretoria, for example. I'd want to fix the house that, there are houses like the one that Robert Sobukwe lived in Kimberley, which is just also left to rack and ruin. And these are places that are historically significant in South Africa. No one's looking after them. And I would want to do that. I'd want to establish a little fund to help people I actually know who are just going through shit. Because you can't help everybody. But we all know someone or a family that's just had a very bad turn of luck. Someone's got health problems, can't afford the bills. I'd want to do that. And then I'd do these anonymous gestures that no one would ever know was me. I would pay for some person's groceries for the rest of his or her life. I would, especially if it's like some old person who doesn't have a lot of money. I'd put some kids through school who are talented and brilliant, but also don't have any resources. I'd do that kind of thing, but not. I really wouldn't. It wouldn't be for attention or for because I wouldn't want to be known as some sort of philanthropist. But I'd quietly want to do this stuff just to make me feel like I'm making a contribution.
And
you know what I mean?
800 million. No one needs to know.
No one will ever know. And you wouldn't. You would never hear from me in the media again. That's for sure. I would.
Really?
I'd spend 10 or 20 million of it just completely excising myself from the internet. You'd find nothing ever again. I'd disappear into the ether and I'd be quiet and irrelevant for eternity.
No ways.
Yeah.
Gareth.
Yes.
But this,
I'd love it. I would love it. If I make enough.
If you stop doing the thing that everybody, and unfortunately for you,
I'm sick of the thing.
People see you do the thing.
I'm sick of the thing.
People will know. People will know. They'll be like, he must have won the lotto, bloody bugger.
Even if I make enough money during the course of my working life to disappear, I will eventually. I promise you, I'm not going to be around writing and talking and mouthing off and ranting and raving until the end.
You'll miss it.
I wouldn't want to do it.
You'll miss it.
I even said last night that I'm feeling very motivated again to start saying what I really think about things. Because the last couple of years I've been passive because, we need to keep a middle road here. We need to please clients. We need to please the audience. We need to stay in business. And it's not easy to do when people are nervous to put their money where our mouths are. And I've decided, I don't care. You got to stand for something. So that's what we're going to be doing.
We have South Africans have.
But I'll get it out of my system.
Condition.
All of us have. The whole world.
We've been nervous.
The whole world.
We've been nervous for a long time.
Well, I've decided to, as Rudyard Kipling says it, risk it all on one turn of pitch and toss. So I reckon, say what you got to say, get it out of your system. I got another 4 years until I'm 50. and I'll be done. I mean, that's the middle of 100, and then
is this
and then I'll
your
find
view of
this
a
is
midlife crisis?
I'm
will
setting-
be you expunging yourself
No,
from the
I'm
internet?
setting very realistic goals for myself. Like, you have to have a plan, right? A 4-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. This is my plan. And at that point, it's time to do something new. Don't you think? You know, my friend Prof. Janssen, when we still used to communicate, I don't know whether he's in the Cape now, or I think he's kind of semi-retired, but we used to speak to each other quite often. He used to be a regular guest on this show. He once said to me, if you do the same thing for more than 7 years without changing stuff, changing it up, doing something different, surprising yourself, you lack imagination. Now, we've been doing this thing for 9 years. So it's, take away 2 years for COVID. The itch is there, right? So it's time. Anyway, I do like this, though. Someone says here in the comments that, joking atheist, I would just buy KFC for that 800 million.
What do you mean by KFC? Like buy the brand? Buy
Angus has done a calculation.
Young
He'd just buy KFC to eat. Angus says on 1 million, you can earn 5K a month. So if you multiply that by 800, you can earn 400,000 Rand a month just in the interest. So you can't spend 400,000 Rand in a month.
So Angus,
Yes,
some years ago, I think Gareth and I had this conversation about that, like calculating.
Yeah,
what
how much would you need to really live well? Yeah.
And I have a similar calculation, Angus. I actually have a similar calculation, which is why I know that 800 million
It's way more than you need.
If I'm ever going to spend it, I'm going to have to do big things for other people.
Right.
Like you have to do a big thing. You have to do
but also
a road, which doesn't even cost that much.
Listen,
you'd have to do.
Phumi, once you've got a house and you've got
a car
and you've got
food and petrol,
and you can pay
and
for
I make my own damn cheese, guys.
And you make your own cheese.
I make my own cheese and I make my own bread.
And you can pay for your kid to go to school, and you can pay for clothes and basic necessities. Maybe you go on one holiday a year or whatever, somewhere extravagant, even if that's what you like.
I only have to pay for my kid to go to school for another 3 years, people.
Oh, nice.
I'm too.
Nice.
I think I'm about 2 weeks away from being 3 years to grade 12.
Well, after you paid all that stuff, what do you really?
Yeah.
Everybody's got these fantasies, including me, of like, I would buy all the stuff that I've wanted. But if you actually made a list of let's say the 10 things that you're really hankering for, and they mustn't be necessities. They mustn't be things that you have to have. In other words, stuff that you need to live. These need to be luxuries. What would you really buy? And, once you've got, let's say somebody's into really nice shoes. Once you've got a couple of pairs of shoes, that won't cost you millions.
No.
Right? Once you've got a couple of those, fine. That's off the list. What else?
Hey.
What else?
Hey, there are people out there. Did you see making the rounds on the social media platforms? Has been Figidem Balula in the most atrocious outfit.
Oh, Jesus. The one that he wore at the World Cup.
Is
that
where
Teletubbies one.
That fuzzy thing.
Yeah.
I was
so
horrified to find out how much that thing is.
Oh, it's so bad. What is that? He looks like a Teletubby.
I thought it was pajamas.
Yeah.
That fuzzy thing I was horrified at how much that fuzzy thing was.
The fuzzy thing. How much did it cost?
Something like, I think like 500,000, I think.
Jesus.
I think it was
shitty
that kind
outfit.
I think it was that kind of money. Either that or maybe.
Oh my God.
I kind of think it was like $68,000, something of that nature. And I don't know if I'm not that person. So I'm not the fancy clothes, big labels,
no,
kind of
disinterested
stuff. Also, if I had 800 million, I'd definitely spend less time going out. I would spend a lot of time going to see artists I like all over the world.
Yeah, that's different.
All over the world.
Well, you did anyway. You see, I mean, again, if this was on your list and I said to you, Boys to Men, and you're not rich now, but you're still going to see Boys to Men.
Yeah, but they were at the Super Bowl.
Right.
When is Sade coming to the Super Bowl?
Sade. Sade's still alive. Is Sade still alive?
You're winner.
I love Sade.
Don't you dare.
No, don't get me wrong. I love her.
When is Sade coming to the Super Bowl? When is that happening? Then I'm okay.
Okay.
But like I'll go see her wherever in the world.
So a lot of people here are talking about at around 40 million for 1 kilometer of constructing a road, your money would not last long, says Ludacris.
That's actually not how much.
It doesn't have to cost. Doesn't cost that much because you're not going to be paying middlemen to do it. You're going to construct it privately. There will be no grift by government. It's not the burning platform if you are holding back.
Carla says the outfit was 29,000 Rand.
Jesus. Still, I'm sorry. It's
still,
outrageous.
Carla. I thought it was outrageous.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like it was in US dollars.
Rand.
I feel like the amount I saw was like thousands of US dollars. So
I love this. Viasan says Fikile is the perfect replacement for Lillian Dube in the clientele ads. Here's a good question from a joking atheist who's very lively in the comments this morning. With so much money, would you still trust your friends and family to remain true to you, or would they chummy up for your cash? That's a serious problem, and I've seen it happen with people.
I would. I don't have lots of friends and family. And the ones I do have, I believe also the friends I have are mostly richer than me.
Mine too. Oh, mine
have real
too.
Jobs.
Yeah.
They have real jobs that pay proper money.
Sade is actually making an album in the works.
Ooh.
Some kind of huge comeback, according to Pablo. Now that would be amazing. Love. Smooth Operator has to still be one of the sexiest songs ever written.
Listen. Pick
do 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 do. When I just hear that saxophone, I'm like,
but that was also that saxophone is also very 80s.
So good, though.
Everyone in the
so
80s
good.
had that saxophone.
Don't knock the 80s until you've been there.
Like everyone had the saxophone. Careless Whisper had the saxophone.
That's right.
Had the saxophone.
That's right.
And that was one of the biggest songs that year. Like Sade, saxophone.
Sweetest Taboo. Karine, now we're going down a little
are we now in
rabbit hole here, the Sade rabbit hole.
Sade rabbit hole.
Sweetest Taboo is also a great song. See, I spoke to Atif and Vake of Big Concerts on Friday last week, and he said to me, this nostalgia stuff is huge. People love it, and they're unembarrassed and unashamed about it in South Africa. He just said, sold out 5 nights with Westlife, okay? You would have sold out the whoever did the Boys to Men concert. Sold out, guaranteed.
It
They
was.
just had Brian Adams. Brian Adams is back this weekend.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Telling you.
Listen, I was unashamed of like singing loud and absolutely in every moment. And just thinking back
beautiful
to all of that, all of the crazy wild time, right? It's like those Boys to Men albums. And the thing I was clear about as I was driving down, I drove with a friend of mine. So girlfriend's road trip.
Nice.
Crazy. Was I don't want them to sing none of their like 2000, those tepid albums they had in the 2000s, the late
but you want
stuff.
the 90s stuff.
I was just like, I have 3 albums that I want them to sing songs out of. Everything else was just they mustn't even think about it.
I want I want the all the 90s stuff from them was the best stuff. Just those harmonies, man. Very few bands who can get that right. There's nothing like it.
That the vocals are still solid. Also, what I knew we weren't gonna get is I knew we weren't gonna get like some like middle-aged, tired old men who are like out of breath on that stage because they've been in
working
this residency.
Yeah, they've been working.
So the physicality, I mean, they're in good shape.
Yes, quite right. Got to be in good shape.
It was good. It was good, guys. It was good. Man. I can't lie to y'all.
I also think, I mean, we've got to carry on with this fantasy of what you would do with the money. Because I think there's still stuff we have to explore.
I
There's stuff we have to get over here.
I
You know,
really,
I mean, some people would build. Like I know Leanne, who does a show with us on a Monday, would like build some animal rehabilitation center, which is also what my sister would love to do.
wow.
And some people would want to look after kids. Some people would want to look after old people. Some people would want to look after animals. Some people would want to build.
I would want to. I suppose I would also think about creating some kind of um self-preserving fund so that none of the stuff that you do fall when I die.
You will carry on.
Yeah.
I would want to build, and now I've thought about it. I'd actually want to build an academy for truly brilliant kids. Like, and again, for kids who can't afford to get there themselves, right? And maybe you open it up to people who are willing to pay as well, so it's sustainable. But you have a limited number of places, 100 people in any year, and they have the smartest lecturers and the most brilliant facilities. And it's not one of these systems where you allow some average person in. You just don't get in unless you're brilliant. Like, you have to be truly amazing, because what we've stopped doing is striving for excellence. And there are people who we have in this country who are truly amazing at business, at science, at mathematics, at all kinds of incredible things that they're preternaturally born with these insane talents. And I want those people to have a place to go where they won't be worrying about like the class average pulling them down, or, you know, the stupid kid, the back of the class who keeps asking the teacher questions that makes them feel retarded. Those kids need a place where they can go to, where they can be brilliant and not be ashamed about being brilliant. And it doesn't get anywhere. The government don't touch it. I pay for everything. It sustains itself on money that comes in from other parents, and government don't get to touch it. It's like the school of excellence. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be.
Here's an interesting one. I would play with slay queens all day and all night, says Mo Dollars.
They'd weigh you out.
Oh, all right.
They'd weigh you out.
Yeah.
Mo Dollars.
Okay. Yeah. Bronwyn says that's what this time is missing. Excellence. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the pass mark, as KB says, the pass mark would be 70% plus instead of 30%. Well, you wouldn't have a pass mark, because none of these people would be doing it to pass. They would actually come out with a certificate that said, this person is adept at this thing in every possible way. They are, this is what they scored the highest in, just so you know what you're dealing with. And they can code, or they can develop a game, or they can, you know, just do the most incredible and useful things that the market is desperate for. This person is just amazing at flying drones. This person is just amazing at designing and terraforming landscapes, that kind of shit. And you hire them based on that, because you know they come out of there. This will replace these stupid universities that are trying to be everything to everyone, that are just letting everybody down. I'm telling you.
Wow. That is cool. That is cool.
This is an interesting one from Carl. He says, I have a huge family. Most of them have immigrated to Portugal, Australia, America, and the UK. I'd throw a massive party for a whole week with everyone in like Mykonos or something. Now, you got to also do that stuff, right? Tito Mboweni's Sugar Mama. I love this. How's that for a name? Oh, wow. The Springboks Open Top Bus Tour has been involved in an accident. What? Is this for real?
The tour bus in the Eastern Cape.
Jesus.
That's why we're going to talk to the security specialist about the Eastern Cape, because that Eastern Cape needs somebody to look at. The whole Springboks tour, went to Joburg, Victoria, Cape Town.
Yeah.
When it got to the Eastern Cape, that's when the scandal started. And now the bus has crashed.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really very sorry to hear that. So I just want to look at your personal wins, because this is something that you brought to the party this morning. So Phumi said, and this
is Brent Lindeque posted this.
Oh.
And it listen, it is a little bit in the space of what would you do with the windfall of 800 million, because I thought, when I read this, and I thought, this is, and I tweeted about it as well, that winning begets winning, right?
Mhm.
You feel better, that's
Sure.
what it feels like. And I was wondering how other people, so all the people in the mentions here, do you feel like kind of going into the end of the year, you're winning more? Are there things like turning for you, or any wins this year? I mean, you started it by saying you're like ready to
Well, yeah, I'm
recalibrate and like
I'm
amp
ready.
it up.
I'm ready for starting fresh with 2024 and doing new things. But 2023 has been a very meh year.
Yeah, really.
Very meh year. A lot of disappointments. Honestly, I really feel like it's been a lot of disappointments. But I'm glad to see that Brent, who's actually putting out a book soon, he asked me to comment in his book. He says we have delivered for 2023 South African champions, and he goes through 235 wins they've reported on Good Things Guy so far in 2023, and the year isn't even over yet. He talks about 4 business wins, 14 educational wins, 10 environmental, 15 entertainment, 12 lifestyle, 7 medical, 17 musical, 31 people wins, 94 sports wins, 23 travel wins, 8 others. And counting. So he's just listing.
Listen, because
stuff we
this
should
is
be
what he
pleased
does,
about.
right?
Yeah,
So this
sure.
is what he does.
He's
but
the positive news
literally,
guy. Yeah.
in the past 2 weeks, the first thing that almost every other day I'm reading South Africa winning something over New Zealand, even like sheep shearing, which was
Yeah,
just
I saw
like,
that.
I was like, oh, poor New Zealand, they're in such a bad streak. I mean,
Yeah,
this is what they
to
do.
lose sheep shearing
This is what they do. they're like the sheep shearing
Absolutely.
capital of the world.
Yeah.
And here they lost to 2 South Africans.
Yeah.
But all of those things, I was just like, and part of it is also because we're looking for the wins now, right? Because that's what also happens, is now you're seeing them, you're seeing the wins. You're like, and also because it's all the qualifiers going into the Olympics next year. So all the various teams that are qualifying to get into the Olympics, everyone's looking now. They're like, look at the hockey team, yay! Look at the netball team, yay! So that's been a little bit of, because 2023 has been hard.
It's been a horrible year for most people.
It's been
not
hard.
bullshit ourselves. I don't know anyone who is better off at the end of 2023 than they were at the start of it. I don't know anyone.
Well,
hang on. Let me not. No. Wait.
no.
Maybe 2 or 3 people.
It's
maximum.
It's
2 or 3, and I'm not just talking about success or business. I mean a lot of other things.
Yeah. Look, I think it has been because of all of the things that are happening. It's been a slog in our economy, so that has all sorts of implications for everybody. They've been the endless rate hikes, which is a drag on everybody. They've been all of those things, but now it feels a little bit like, there was no rate hike the last time the MPC made, so it kind of felt like, but also the weather's looking up. We're in a good space.
I hope so.
We're in a good space.
I'm endlessly optimistic, but I'm also realistic about 2023. It was not a year that I will look back, as the Queen said about Annus Horribilis, upon with unbridled excitement and satisfaction. That's not how I feel. 2023, not my favorite year. But who knows? We still got a month and a half to change things.
And I actually I don't go into a lot of shops because y'all know I hate shopping. But I was in the store 2 days ago, and guess what? Mariah Carey came on.
Oh, yeah.
All
yes,
I Want for
absolutely.
Christmas, which is also my favorite time of year. So that made it.
Yeah, I listen. This is my favorite time of year too. So I'm absolutely sure that I will be bouncing around with plenty of energy.
Feel a little. Listen, when that Mariah Carey came on, I did feel a little bouncy. I did feel a little. It was nice.
It's a nice feeling.
It was nice. It was nice.
I love it. All right, a couple other things. Phumi's talking here about something that she wanted to bring up, any of the winning spirit in the air, and I like that because we need to find reasons to smile. For a lot of people, it's been a tough year, but I see here that I don't know if you saw all of this. Ryan actually tipped me off. The fake UNISA. In fact, Lebang yesterday on the show was telling me about these fake UNISA degrees. Apparently, a Malawian singer and socialite called Pempero Mpande got an honorary doctorate, although the University of South Africa has denied that this is true. The socialite took to social media to share his achievement. Subsequent to this, UNISA denied ever nominating him as a candidate for an honorary degree. And UNISA's just basically putting out fires left, right, and center at the moment. They are not winning. They're not winning.
And they did win against Blade.
They won against Blade, and that's important because he's trying to place them.
Win.
He's trying to place them under administration, right?
Which is an important win.
But they put on this whole fake, not UNISA, but somebody else.
This guy, the audacity,
a whole fake graduation ceremony. Unbelievable.
But you know what is the fake graduation ceremony was not what for me tops the audacity. It's the fact that he got dressed up in a red gown.
Yeah.
He made himself a little Canva UNISA certificate.
Yeah.
Two, not one, but two. And then drove to UNISA and stood next to the big sign on the wall that says UNISA with his certificates and his red gown. And he was just like, thanks, UNISA. For me, it was just like...
And the guy
came all the way from Malawi to come stage this.
You got to admire the audacity of it, right? There's a lot of audacity there. When people use the word unapologetic, this is the kind of person they're talking about.
Listen, it's and now
now
we're just awash with fake doctors, fake. This is what happens. You allow one Matthew Lani.
Yeah, exactly.
Lani.
Now we got millions of them.
Now the floodgates are
But you heard
open.
what Matthew Lani's lawyer said, right? There's nothing illegal about lying. There's nothing even wrong with it.
There's nothing illegal or wrong for them about lying. But my God, fraud, impersonating people, selling fake shit, all of that is wrong and illegal. And trespassing. At least trespassing. Why couldn't they get him for trespassing in the hospital? Why couldn't they get him for that? There are boards everywhere. You know how you see boards everywhere saying trespassers will be prosecuted.
Do you want to see more punishment for him?
Dr. Lani.
You want to see more punishment?
In fact, if we had a town square, I would suggest
you don't think being dragged on social media, dragged in inverted commas is what they call it, right?
If we had a town square, I would suggest we bring him to the town square and whip him.
The shame bell. Shame. I actually think, you know what I want to do? I want to start watching Game of Thrones again from season 1. I'll take it over a few months because we're going towards December. I'll have time. It's a lot. It's 8 seasons. I think I should do that. I'm going to start watching Game of Thrones again.
Funny that
such
because
a good
this
show.
morning when I woke up, I, for some odd reason, was thinking, I don't think I watched the Downton Abbey movie. But
I definitely didn't.
I wouldn't.
Ben did. Ben loves Downton Abbey.
I wouldn't mind watching Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
Again, because it was just...
Okay, maybe that's the fun one. Who knows? I'll start with Game of Thrones. You start with Downton Abbey. We see who's more satisfied with their choice by the end of it.
I will certainly be more satisfied at the end because I loved Game of Thrones. I read all the books. And I'm anxiously...
You read the books first? Because they started making the show and then he had to write while they were making the show, right?
So when they started making the show, there were 3 books out. And there were supposed to be more.
Okay.
And so he's
George R.R. Martin.
And because he wasn't writing fast enough. In fact, he still hasn't.
He wasn't writing fast enough.
In fact, he still hasn't released the one that was touted to. This is the one he's writing. So it still hasn't been released.
The one that they've made season 8 out of?
No, they had to they actually had to diverge and start.
So what is he writing now?
I think by the time we got to season 4 and 5, they were already kind of creating their own thing because they were like, dude, you ain't right. Where's the book? Because it's got 3.
He's a strange cat, huh? He's a funny looking man. He's written this incredible... I mean, he and J.K. Rowling easily the most successful authors of the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
And both making this fantasy sort of medieval, magic, dragons, all that kind of stuff. That's what people are into. They want to escape from the real world.
Listen.
They don't want to be in the real world. Clearly.
Because have you seen the real world? Do you know what shit is going down in the real world? I'd much rather be contending with dragons.
Well, it's all allegorical because actually you are facing dragons in your own life. You just have to figure out what kinds of
Which
dragons
one's the dragon?
Yeah, and figure out who in your life is the dragon. It could be your mother-in-law, could be your best friend, could be your business partner,
could be breath and breathing fire.
Could be your sibling, could be anyone.
Bad breath and breathing fire. Who could that be in my life?
I've rewatched Game of Thrones 3 times now, says Tracy. Read the books as well. Every time you pick up clues and new things for the House of Dragons. I've also read Fire and Blood.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot that we had. There's a series that came after Game of Thrones, which was on last year, right?
Yes. Which is supposed to have. We're still waiting for a season
like a prequel.
2. I think they're never going to make a season
2. Okay. It seems like this doing Game of Thrones again is quite a thing. People are into it. All right. Very good. Well, when we come back in the next half of the show, the next hour of the show, we'll be doing the Burning Platform. We'll be looking at what's going on in the world, and there's a lot.
Speak about fire and brimstone.
Jesus, and how.
Smoke-breathing dragons.
We got to talk to Jasmine Opperman, who is from University of Johannesburg, and who also can talk to us about all kinds of stuff, locally and internationally. We'll also talk to Eliav Belotsercovsky, who is the Israeli ambassador to South Africa, a general update on what's been happening there and his position as ambassador, because a lot of people are saying it's in jeopardy. He might not be the ambassador. Israel might not have an ambassador in South Africa for very long. Certainly if Naledi Pandor gets away, and some other very powerful forces in the government and society, because it's certain to me that in this country, one side makes a whole lot more noise than the other. But we will see. As with so many things, we will have to wait and see. Just a couple of interesting ideas here. So Leonie says, I don't have a bucket list as I'm so fortunate to live that the last 7 years fighting stage 4 cancer, I'll put the money into the bank and jet off to Whitehall in London for Remembrance Sunday. Ask Piers Morgan for a coffee, and then fly to New England in the USA to see the last of the fall. Then I'll return and have interest on my money. I'll appoint someone in the bank to help me, giving money to my son, daughter, and sisters, and then I'll wait for people to apply with small businesses.
Oh, wow.
That's an interesting idea.
Wow.
I think that's amazing, Leonie. That's beautiful. Love it. Gareth, you would love a series called Shadow and Bone, 2 books merged into one show. Very interesting, fast, and fun. Okay.
Shadow and Bone it is.
All right. Well, people are giving us homework. Excellent.
I haven't watched TV in such a long time, actually.
I don't know what's happening on TV.
I am looking for a series to watch.
Well, you've already got. Now we've given you. You said you're doing Downton.
What is this? Shadow and Bone.
And now Shadow and Bone. Is that a TV series or is it a book series? I wonder. And J.K. Rowling, I mean, she's got an interesting life, right? Because she's done all of this. She's had the success of her book. She's done the movies.
She got the windfall of the millions and millions.
And she apparently lives in an actual castle somewhere.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I would not want to live in a castle.
Think,
also, surprisingly, my house on the south coast there, overlooking.
You'd want it to be a castle?
No, I don't want a big house.
You don't?
No. I know the number of rooms I would like in my house. 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
So only because I have a child. 2 bedrooms, a nice big open plan kitchen, dining room, lounge.
Right.
Because I make cheese.
Right. So now you're going to be the cheesemaker. That's what you'll be famous for. I would like
people to be there watching me make the cheese. Because I'd also like it to be open plan into a garden with a pool and a hot tub.
Hot tub.
Hot tub.
You want an American style hot tub. Yeah, all right. That's good.
Because I would like to throw parties. I'd like to throw lots of dinner parties. That's probably something I'd spend a lot of money on. Flying people in to come have
come
a
and join
jaw.
you at your
Yeah,
house on the coast.
But I only have 2 bedrooms, so they're not allowed to sleep over.
Yes, they have
must
to go.
Stay.
They have to get out. They have to stay in Airbnbs around you. Yeah. Oh no, I'm all for that too. That's very good.
It's the reason I don't want more than 2 bedrooms. Can't have more than 1 person stay over.
All right, listen, you got to play your own version of this fantasy game that Phumi and I have been playing this morning. So you imagine what you would do if you had that cash. But we have to return to the world of reality. Enough of the fantasy for one morning. The reality is going to hit us right between the eyes in the burning platform, which is next. Don't go away.
Let's talk about what is the average cost of a new car today. What are we seeing in the new car space a little bit? And just talk about, some advice that we can give anybody who's looking for a car. And for context, I was looking at some research, and the banks say that right now the average cost of a new car monthly is about 11,000 Rand that you'll be paying, which is an insane amount, versus 2019, 7,800. For context of the full price, it's about 393,000 Rand. So just off of that alone, do you think that we're going to be seeing that stay at that amount? Do you think new cars are going to be getting cheaper?
So there's a few ways to look at this, right? If in 2019 a car cost 7,851 Rand per month for finance, what can you buy for 7,851 Rand?
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Talking about enlargement of the penis, the average male penis is how big?
According to you on the show this morning, 13.5 centimeters.
In the erect state.
Oh, in the erect state, yes.
And in a flaccid state, 8.8 centimeters. Do you think it's relevant in the South African context?
That was the Tea Health Show, empowering you with knowledge. Download all previous episodes on your favorite podcast platform. The Tea Health Show is brought to you by Tea Clinic.
All right. We've got lots of things to get to and to talk about this morning. It is a live Thursday, as always, lively Thursday, and the burning platform is our chance to catch up on the big stories of the week, talk about all the important issues that are going to affect your life. And Phumi has already got a notebook out. She's working tirelessly in the background. She's no doubt got questions and all kinds of research to bring to bear. I want to welcome our first guest to the burning platform this morning, and I'm thrilled to have her on for the first time. Jasmine Opperman is a qualified risk analyst, holds a master's degree in history at the University of Johannesburg, so we're going to get on like a house on fire. During her tenure as provincial head of the Eastern Cape, she engaged in senior government liaison, inclusive of premiers, MECs, and ministers. She was also commissioned as a senior trainer in the Intelligence Academy, focusing on analysis, operational analysis, counterterrorism, low-intensity conflict, and intelligence management within a constitutional democracy. Since then, she's compiled weekly and monthly insights and forecasts on extremism and political violence in Southern Africa. Very, very valuable contribution to our knowledge of what's actually happening on the ground. And there's a lot of extremism that we need to be aware of. In sub-Saharan Africa, we know that this is a very real problem. So, Jasmine, it's good to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning,
can you hear us?
Morning, Phumi. Phumi, just in terms, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
We hear you perfectly.
Phumi, in terms of your fantasy, I agree with 2 rooms. The one must be a library. No open floor. I want to be left alone in a world of books That's all I want to do.
Very good. Very good. I noticed, Jasmine, I noticed also that you had your cigarette out just now. Feel free to smoke during this show. I grew up in a house with both parents who smoke. I'm sad to say that in the media we see too few people having a cigarette every now and then. I think it would calm people down and they would be much more valuable to us if they just had a ciggy every now and then, instead of being bullied everywhere they went just for smoking.
You know, Gareth, we're talking serious stuff, but I maintain that the most successful policy ever by the current government has been the smoking policy, because smokers obliged. We're actually very kind people.
Yes. And I, as a non-smoker, tried to stand up for you guys, and you left me at the front of the battle and disappeared off into your little caves and dwellings and houses, and left me to try and fight on my own for something I didn't even do. So I give up on smoking. I'm not going to defend you guys anymore. I see that they're trying to propose another bill as we speak against the people who vape, but we'll leave that for another day. So let's just get into it. Jasmine, there's a lot to talk about. Let's start off with what your primary concern is at the moment, and what you're often asked to comment on and do analysis of. How much religious and political extremism do we have in Southern Africa, and where are the major threats coming from? Because we don't talk very much about terrorism. You know, we had a guy in here the other day who was telling us about Pagad and how that all went down in the 90s and the early 2000s. That's more of a gangsterism thing in some ways, but terrorism in South Africa is something which seems an arm's length away. Is that true, or are we living in this cloud cuckoo land where we think we're immune to the stuff that's happening in the rest of Africa? We know about Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. What is our state of play?
The state of play in South Africa, and I've always maintained that if we talk terrorism, we must look beyond the act of actual violence, is the presence of various extremist groups that is exploiting organized criminal networks for terror funding. And here might be a bit controversial, but let's call it for what it is. If one looks at Hamas, has received funding from South African soil. Now, many people argue Hamas is not a terror organization. It's an irrelevant question for me in the current climate that is happening. But in South Africa, we are definitely seeing a presence, even those that went to the caliphate in Syria and Iraq and returned, because the conviction to that ideology goes beyond committing an act of violence. It's supporting. In Southern Africa, Mozambique is the key focus and has been keeping me busy now since 2015-16 with the Islamic State opening the door and in the region confronted for the first time the violent face of an extremist group that is using a local insurgency. Hence, South Africa was grey-listed. That was part of the reason, is that money laundering and terror financing is taking place. And yes, we might have the policies at play, but it is not being implemented, or we don't see enough successful prosecution, which is a fair argument because the court cases simply fall flat. The recent case at the Mall of Africa with Abadiga being taken by the Special Forces in the so-called exercise, so coincidental, at the same place at the same time. And up until today, we don't know where he is, although I'm convinced that he was taken by the Americans. But that is just merely a hypothesis. I do not have the facts.
You know, one of the things that we have heard a lot about, and it is something that keeps rearing its head, speaking of funding terror organizations, is as we see the network of spaza shops in rural areas and townships increasingly becoming foreign-owned, and most of those foreigners either coming from Pakistan or coming from Somalia, areas that are funnels to kind of terrorist organizations and operations. And the fact that all of this money is possibly being channeled back there and that South Africa is being used as a money laundering hub because of the sophisticated banking network that we have, and because of the laxness of our security forces and our law enforcement agencies. And that's why we got downgraded.
Jasmine, to Phumi's point, what you're saying is very, very serious. Do our government take it seriously? Because they're equivocating on the whole situation in the Middle East at the moment. Well, not even equivocating. They've stated very plainly on which side they are. And clearly, they are not particularly concerned, or we would have seen some arrests and we would have seen the criminal justice system be brought to bear here. What is the scale of South Africa's either financing, cozying up to, or giving succor to terrorists in this country? What's the scale of that? Do we have any idea?
Has she lost a connection?
Jasmine, can you hear us? There must be a hell of a delay. Not sure. Seems like she's live. Jasmine, can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I think
Just
we've
gone
lost
off there.
Jasmine. Look, and when we do
Try
get
and get her back.
And when we do get her back, one of the other things that I want to talk, and over the past couple of weeks, we have had people coming into the show and talking to us about the places between where the policy and where the policy is supposed to be hitting the road in terms of implementation, and where it's fallen apart. You know, just talking about the story with Pagat and what's happened and how that was systematically stripped out of the police force. What I would also want to check in on with Janice when she comes back on. Jasmine, when she comes back on the line.
I'm apologizing
Not a
for
problem.
that, Gareth and
Did you
Phumi.
hear the last question?
Did you hear my last question?
Yes,
and
I am
Phumi's?
back.
Okay, let's hear your response.
I apologize. Gareth, can you just repeat the last bit? I will respond to Phumi now.
So just the scale of all of this, because
Phumi,
it's
we
evident.
must
It's
be
evident
careful.
that. Sorry.
I'm
I'll
always
repeat. I'll
getting
repeat at the
concerned
end.
when
You
we
go ahead.
refer to foreigners coming from Pakistan, coming from Kenya. There are 3 countries to which.
I think her line is letting her down.
I'm sorry, Gareth.
Go
We're
ahead.
looking at Kenya, we're looking at DRC, and we're looking at Somalia. Those are the 3 primary destinations that receives terror funding. But we must be careful when we refer to foreigners being present in South Africa. I mean, most of these foreigners do not support these extremist groups. And that we have to be careful that we don't categorize them. I mean, the main person involved in terror financing for the Islamic State owns businesses in Johannesburg. And I'm not going to mention names due to legal implications. A very prominent person that is born and bred in South Africa. So we have to be careful that we don't put a blanket over these foreign communities. Then secondly, Phumi, we have a sophisticated banking system, but the terror funding sidesteps the official banking lines. We are talking about pay points. We are talking about money transfers. It's easy as to go on a website of a terror group. There's a donation button that you click and you transfer money without an indication that it's support for a terror group, but for a charity organization. Terror funding is extremely problematic if you don't have cooperation from other intelligence services. Because if you have the transfer, has that money ended up in the hands of extremist groups? There you need the cooperation. And hence we see a persistent struggle in finalizing court cases around terror funding.
Sounds extremely complicated. What is the scale of this thing? That was my question earlier. How big is it? What's the amount of money we're talking about that is transferred between all the various people who may be participating in this and these organizations? Or do we just have to thumbsuck and guess?
Gareth, can I be honest with you? It will be nothing more than a guess, because most of these transfers are not being recorded. Most of these transfers that go through is not being done by the actual, there's no identification of the people involved. And then the destination of those that receive the money is also not always known to our local authorities and to us as analysts. But if I look at the scale of organized crime, if you look at the recent drug busts that has taken place, which is a small amount, if you talk about an organized criminal economy that is 3-4 times bigger than our GDP, we can just work backwards and then ask how much of this ends up in the hand of terror groups. And that is where we stuck with. Gareth, I cannot give you an amount because I will be then super guessing. But if you look at Al-Shabaab in Somalia, one of the financially best aligned terror groups on the Africa continent. If you look at the Islam, and remember Al-Shabaab is AQ aligned, Islamic State has got now realigned its financing. The main affiliates gets 40%. Islamic State in Mozambique gets 20%, being distributed in a formal, structured manner. These terror groups are, I want to call it, functioning like international companies with their own goals and objectives.
And I mean, northern Mozambique, it's not even controversial to say that much of northern Mozambique is outside of the control of the Mozambican government and is pretty much being run by these terrorists.
And I think,
yes, I must, the difference has come. Gareth, can I respond? I'm sorry, the line is not always that clear. But Gareth, if we talk Cabo Delgado, with the Rwanda deployment and with the Samam deployment, Makumia, I'm not going into all these names, it's just confusing. But at the end of the day, that they have taken a hammering by the deployment, specifically by the Rwanda forces, has put them on the back foot. And Samam's presence has made a difference. The problem is that the Islamic State extremist ideology is finding home. And as we are seeing now, they are recruiting, they are gaining new fighters within Mozambique. They cooperating with Islamic State Central Africa province in terms of training. And we have seen 24 IED incidents the last 12 to 18 months, which we have not seen before. So the sophistication is adjusting. You can deploy as many soldiers as you want. You will not kill the idea. And we've seen with the Mozambican elections with Frelimo and how they perceive the government. And we are sitting with an endless gravel road in this region.
What I would like to know about is Mozambique is right next door to us, and its ideology crossing borders is not a difficult thing, right? And kind of watching the crazy space that we're in social media, and how even the fake news can travel so widely, so quickly. And bringing it back home to South Africa, considering what happened in July 21, how prepared are our intelligence forces to kind of recognize, identify, and respond to any kind of terror operations making their way into our country?
Phumi, very relevant question, and mind me going around Cape Town answering that. An intelligence service or intelligence product is only as good as the actions being taken by the institutions with an execution mandate. You can have the best early warning. If the government is not responding or deciding to take action, you have a problem. If one looks at the
Yeah.
last American terror alert, which it went crazy, but the response to that, I had to give the government a compliment. Highly unlikely that the terror attack was being planned. Let me be clear on that. We know how intelligence is being used to push and pull foreign policy and diplomatic relations. And the Americans need an enemy, even if they have to create one, but they need an enemy for their foreign policy objectives. And I'm not being anti-American here, I'm just being realistic. But in terms of a terror attack, if we talk about your lone wolf attack, a person this morning deciding, listen, I'm going to kill a Jewish family. Let's talk about what's happening in Gaza, in Israel. The likelihood for any intelligence service knowing that is extremely small. If an organized crime syndicate, and we know they are present, I know of 4 or 5 syndicates or cells that are definitely aligned to extremist ideologies, and I'm bringing in groups like Hezbollah, and I will not be popular in the corridors of parliament by saying this, but these groups, extremist ideologies, and they are present in South Africa. There, the intelligence service can play a definite role, but will the powers to be, Gareth, it takes me back to your question, how does government view terrorism? And that defines our policy. If you look at our national security bill now, I mean, good Lord, churches being vetted. It takes me back to apartheid South Africa, where we had a communist behind every bush. Now we have a threat behind every bush, and even churches come into play, and even NGOs come into play. Stop constructing threats and let the intelligence service guide you to the actual threats. Don't securitize unnecessary. But in South Africa, terrorism is a sensitive topic. We need to move beyond that. We need to understand that people that are committed and convicted and do believe in these extremist ideas do not represent a community, a faith, or by any people, majority people out there, and actions has to be taken. So we need to live out of our history and not get caught up in our history when we talk terrorism. What Hamas has done on 7 October are acts of terror. Let's be clear. Listen, what Israel now is doing can simply not be justified. It cannot be justified. It is terrible what is happening there. But by simply taking sides, we're not getting anywhere. If we are that concerned about the Palestinian issue, which, so by the way, is not a priority for Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, as they don't support the Palestinian nationalistic objectives. But if we are so concerned about what is happening in Palestine, and we have Hamas in South Africa, what are we doing to build the bridges and seek some pathway with Israelis that do not support the current actions that's taking place? But instead of black and white mindset, the same applies to any other terror group out there.
Have we got the capacity to respond locally? Have we got the capacity? Even if we take away the issue of whether they want to or not, have we got the capacity to, when there is credible intelligence, does the state have the capacity to respond appropriately?
Phumi, it's a very difficult question to answer. If there's intelligence available from, let's take South Africa's special forces, military perspective in dealing with the issue, I do believe there is sufficient capacity when we talk special forces in South Africa, because it's one of our strategic crown jewels still at play, although Abadiga has really hurt them badly. But from a police perspective, from a main law and order perspective, if we cannot even deal with shebeens and with gangsterism, how are we going to? And that is our problem. If we talk about our prosecution capabilities, if we cannot even conclude a terror case, Verulam, KwaZulu-Natal. The Tulsi case was a CI-driven operation. And we couldn't conclude that court case because files just vanished. And that collusion is weakening our capacity at all levels of society.
Jasmine, I'm going to have to let you go, and I thank you very much for being part of the show this morning. Some interesting insights that you shared with us here, and reasons for us to really be very concerned. But I hope we'll chat to you again soon, and thank you for your participation this morning. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Gareth. Thank you, Phumi. And open that library, Phumi. I'm coming to visit.
Very good.
I only
Thanks,
have one
Jasmine.
room.
Thank you very much. Jasmine Opperman, and some interesting thoughts there. Lots of things that made me very uncomfortable. But we got into very briefly, as she threw in her opinion too, on what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, and some really extraordinary things. If you cast your mind back to just over a month ago, I think everyone in the world was shocked and horrified. And it's amazing how quickly things change. It's amazing how quickly people move on. Because now we're talking very theoretically and in abstract ways about stuff that is actually happening on the ground and that has been happening now for a whole month in southern Israel, even in northern Israel, on the Dome, which is constantly under fire, and then in Gaza, which is now turning into the focus of the world. We have in the studio, while he's still in South Africa, I'm pleased to say, the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to South Africa. And it's a great pleasure, Ambassador, to have you here. He is, of course, Eliav Belotsercovsky, who is very much trying to update the people in South Africa about what's going on in Israel and what Israel needs to know about what's going on here. So, first of all, are you planning to make an evacuation or an exit anytime soon? Are your bags packed, Ambassador?
So I arrived to South Africa 2 years ago, and my main mission is to try to improve the relations between Israel and South Africa. And I still am deeply committed to this mission, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, your work's cut out for you because the government have made it absolutely clear that they are disinterested in any kinds of relationships, good or bad, with Israel. They just want nothing to do with Israel. Just this week, the latest news is that South Africa is pulling all of its representatives out of Israel. And there must be pressure on you because back home in Israel, they're asking you what the hell's happening here. And you don't have very much good news for them, do you?
Well, I don't want to comment on the actions of the South African government.
That's very diplomatic of you.
I know, but I still don't want to. I'm not going to comment on what they are doing. I again want to reiterate the fact that we are interested in having good relations with South Africa. We believe in a dialogue. We believe in an open discussion, even on things that we not always agree on. And I think we have a lot of potential, a tremendous potential of working together on very many issues.
I'm happy to hear that. Have the Department of International Relations and Cooperation been receptive to these thoughts and these ideas that you have?
Well, we are. I'm trying to have a dialogue with different segments of the people in South Africa, and some things we are moving better. There is more openness. Some things are more difficult, but we are trying. And I think again, my task, as I see it, is to try and to promote the relations between our two countries.
So a friend of mine this week introduced me to a fellow named Edward Murrow. And I'm really intrigued by the fact that he says, if you're not confused right now, then you really don't know what's going on. And I'm so confused.
You mean in terms of what's happening there?
Anything. If you're not confused right now, you really don't know what's going on. And there are so many things moving so quickly. I mean, every morning when we wake up and listen to the news, what's happening, where things are. And then because we're all on social media, there's so much what we're calling in our office clickbait diplomacy happening right now, right? Lots of megaphones with lots of stuff that sounds like clickbait. And I'm wondering what, in South Africa specifically, the relationship between Israel and South Africa is far deeper than just diplomacy. We've got family here and there. We have got, whether it is in agriculture, in our economy, quite
technology.
deep
Yeah, of course.
relationship. What does it mean when the diplomatic relations fail in the way that they are failing right now? What does that mean for us as South Africans?
Well, I wouldn't define the diplomatic relations as failing. I think there are difficulties. I will not hide that. There are difficulties. But as you said, life goes on. And we have very strong economic relations. We have about, I think, $400 or $450 million of trade going both ways. We have academic connections. We have tourism. People are going back and forth. We have a Jewish community here, which is very, very active in the development of this country. So, life goes on. The ties go on. The relations go on, and
that is in spite of whatever diplomatic challenges may arise.
Well, diplomatic challenges exist. That is true, but this is our job as diplomats to try to overcome them.
All right, so Ambassador, let's just talk about what's going on at the moment, because there are so many people with so many opinions. What is the official line on how things have proceeded since those terror attacks on the 7th of October? I think at that point, the world was in outrage, and I think everybody was absolutely horrified by what they saw. It very quickly, within hours of that happening, turned into a whataboutism argument, both sides, cycle of conflict, blah, blah, blah. Where are we at the moment? Because Israel has responded quite fast, but they've given a bit of time in between. And it wasn't as if, immediately, there was this retaliation from the other side, despite the fact that people were probably justified, and many people, including most Americans, have that opinion. South Africans, maybe it's a different kettle of fish. But what is Israel's response now with the benefit of hindsight over a month? And where are we at in terms of how this conflict is escalating?
Yes. Well, I think it's very important for the people to understand the facts. I think, and this is the key thing here, because there is a lot of attempts to manipulate the information and distort the reality. So the facts are very important. So obviously, on the 7th of October, Israel was attacked in a massive way. We didn't expect it. It was not only that it was an attack on a very large magnitude and scope, but also the degree of cruelty that our people in the southern part of Israel have experienced was really unprecedented. It was, in a way, it was a kind of a medieval savagery of slaughtering families, children, old people, taking hostages, and so on. So this was a truly experience that shocked the people of Israel. And I believe not only the people of Israel, but of course we felt it. It were our people that were slaughtered, and this is something that I think for all of us as a society was a huge blow. And I think many people in Israel are still traumatized, because we lost about 1,400 people, and as of now, as we speak, there is still a very long process of identification of victims, because not all the victims have been identified already. So these victims, they had to be buried, because you can't keep dead people. So they were buried, but then they had to be exhumed and for identification and so on. So So we are still in this process. Funerals are still going on in Israel. We could see whole families being buried one next to each other. And of course, there is a great deal of worry regarding the hostages.
Yeah.
We had to
How many hostages are
Speaking
there
of
at this
hostages.
point? Yeah.
So-
What's the status of those hostages?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because we are not sure who is alive and who is not.
Hmm.
And every time we unfortunately find remains of some people that were thought to be hostages. Just a few days ago, there was during the 7th of October, there was a very tragic case of a young girl that was basically kidnapped at the party that took place in the south of Israel. There were 260 people that were killed on this during this party, mainly young people that came for a festival of love and music, as it was called. And it turned to be a bloodbath. And one of these girls, she was kidnapped. She was brutally attacked by the Hamas terrorists, raped, and then paraded naked on the streets of Gaza. And this was documented by the Hamas terrorists themselves. And a few days ago, we got information that she was dead. And the information was because, in a very, I don't know, brutal, in a very shocking way, her head was found.
Oh my God!
So that's the level of atrocities that we've gone through, and that was the shock.
Ambassador, over the weekend, the BBC was reporting from an interview that they had with, and I've been trying to say this name, and I hope I say it correctly, Abu Mazrak, right? And with all the calls for a ceasefire, what he then said, and what the BBC was reporting, is that they are unable to say where all the hostages are, or what he calls the guests of Palestine. They are unable to say where all the hostages are, because different factions are holding different people. Now, to me, when I hear that, it also says that there is no center that is holding information. So how then does Israel proceed in a situation like that, where the one person says, we don't know where everyone is, we don't know who is holding who, we don't know what the situation on the ground is? How do you proceed with, who do you negotiate with if there is to be a negotiation? How do you agree to a ceasefire if there's no central power in control?
Well, I would say that the situation is really complicated. Also because we don't know exactly who was taken hostage, who is still alive, who is not. Unfortunately, nobody except the Hamas has access to the hostages. So they don't. We don't know their condition. We don't know what provisions they have, what conditions they are held in, and we know that among the hostages there are some very elderly people. That some of them require medication. Some of them are Holocaust survivors. And we also know that there are also about 35 children.
Yeah,
some of them
babies.
are very, very young. Yeah, the youngest is 9 months old. So, we really don't know what is their situation. We don't know anything about them.
So,
but just to conclude, we see they were kidnapped by the Hamas. This attack was perpetrated by the Hamas, and the Hamas has the responsibility for releasing of all the hostages. And we see them as responsible for that.
So, Ambassador, let's talk about the response Israel has been persuaded to take in the last while, because this is now what's garnering enormous international attention. And people are talking about how, it's turned Gaza into powder and rubble, and that Israel is coming to this with full force. I don't know how exactly anyone expected Israel to respond. Was there a better way, with the benefit of a month's hindsight? How is Israel doing? What is their aim? What is the ultimate goal in Gaza? Is it to extirpate Hamas? And is that going to cost the lives of many civilians, as any state of war will? That's how war works. Have we given up on the hostages? I mean, because if we're going to attack here, that's going to be part of the question, right?
Well, unfortunately, we are dealing here with a terrorist organization. And the terrorist organization, this specific terrorist organization, Hamas, has explicitly stated, and it's also written in their charter, and they have repeated it times and times again, that their aim is to destroy Israel. It's not a question of territory. It's not a question of some kind of a dispute. It's for us, it's an existential issue.
Yeah.
So our only way to deal with Hamas is to prevent them from having any attacks in the future of a similar on a similar scale. And we need to remember that, again, as we speak, the Hamas still fires rockets on
Every
Israel. Every day. And until now, since the 7th of October, they fired close to 10,000 rockets. And they fire them indiscriminately. They fire them on cities, on towns, on villages in Israel.
And if Israel didn't have this dome, they would be killing as many people as Israel's accused of killing in Gaza.
I assume so,
Probably
but it's not
many
a matter. It's not a matter of killings.
No, it's not to this proportionality.
Yeah,
discussion.
exactly. And what we all the time are saying, and that's what we really. This is our policy. We don't have. It's not a war of Israel with the Palestinians. We don't have any kind of conflict with the Palestinian people in Gaza. We do have a conflict and a war with the Hamas. And our aim of this operation is to dismantle the terrorist capabilities of the Hamas in Gaza. Because if we are not going to do it, it's going to be repeated again and again and again. And we greatly regret, deeply, deeply regret any loss of lives and property for the people of Gaza. It's not our aim.
The cost, though, is on both sides. And it's not just a cost of lives, but there is also a psychological cost, I would say, in terms of the terror that is wrought on both sides, but also as the world watches what is viewed as a systematic slaughtering. Is there no opportunity for any kind of diplomacy? Is there anybody having the open channels, understanding that Hamas, unlike PLO, are a terror organization that does not really have a mandate from the people? But is there anybody that is able to open the channels on both sides, particularly in terms of saving the lives of women and children?
Well, I think that, the people of Gaza are really suffering. I mean, there is no doubt about it.
Well, they've been suffering before October the 7th.
They've been suffering before, but
anyway.
particularly now.
I mean, it's a horrible, horrible place to live.
It is.
And most of that is not to do with Israel.
And, right. And they have been living since 2007 under a really very brutal and repressive dictatorship.
Yes.
So this is also, you're right, because this also has to be stated.
Yes.
But I think now it's very easy to stop the suffering of the people of Gaza. And it's in the hands of the Hamas. If the Hamas releases the hostages, if the Hamas stops firing the missiles on Israel, if the Hamas will punish the perpetrators of the terrorist attack and stops terrorizing Israel and choose the political path of negotiation and talking to Israel, then the people of Gaza will stop suffering.
Yeah.
And the people of Israel will stop suffering.
And what about the tension between the PLO and Hamas? does that also come into play in terms of who has the opportunity really to bring an end or to bring people to the negotiation table?
Well, this is something that is related to more to the Palestinian side, but I think that any support for the Hamas basically weakens the more moderate part of the Palestinian society, because the Hamas is really the extreme of the extreme, and the Hamas, you cannot have peace or negotiations with the Hamas like you couldn't have peace negotiations with ISIS or with Al Qaeda. It's exactly the same ideology, and what we saw, it even exceeded in cruelty the barbarous attacks of ISIS and Al Qaeda. So I don't think anyone could think of talking to ISIS or talking to Al Qaeda, and I also don't think it's possible to talk to the Hamas unless, again, they give up on their terrorist activities and turn into some sort of a political party or player. Yeah, exactly. So otherwise, you cannot coexist with terrorists.
So all these calls for a ceasefire, I mean, that's pie in the sky, because unless Hamas will surrender and stop doing what they're doing, there is absolutely no incentive for Israel to stop with their attacks on Gaza. They have to wipe out Hamas if Hamas will not stand and deliver and play according to the rules of war. I mean, there's no way Israel can tolerate a terrorist organization whose primary purpose and stated manifesto is to wipe out Israel. You can't, there's no sitting down with someone like that and having a conversation, is there, Ambassador? And what do Israelis feel about this? Is Israel very united in this situation? Is there a question of communities all over the world who are standing with Israel? Because we've heard from our government and others that they're very much standing with what they say is Palestine. In this case, they're not going so far as to say they're standing with Hamas, although there are protests all over the world where people are saying, obviously, they're standing with Hamas, which is disturbing. What's Israel saying? What are the people in Israel saying? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, the people in Israel are united. As I said, we are still in a stage of trying to come to terms with what has happened on the 7th of October. But obviously, everybody, and I mean really everybody, understands that there is no other way. And it's the duty of our government to act in self-defense in order to prevent such attacks on Israeli people in the future. And I don't think any government in the world would agree to go through something like this,
and then to their own annihilation.
Exactly, because that's just
is that not
impossible.
The primary purpose of a government is to protect their citizens?
Absolutely, that's the contract between the government and its people.
Social contract. We speak a lot about social contracts in this country, but I'm also wondering. Then it has always been Israel's stated position that if you come at us, we're coming back tenfold, right? And this is what we're watching play out with Hamas. What about other organizations, kind of Hezbollah, the West Bank? And this morning, I think there was something in the news about some kind of insurgency happening in that area too. Have you seen any emboldening? Because that's what happens when one person tries their luck, other people are emboldened to try their luck too. What's happening in that front?
Well, the Hezbollah, like the Hamas, are both aimed. Their aim is destruction of Israel. Hezbollah is based in Lebanon. Both of them are supported by Iran. By the way, Iran was the only country in the world that congratulated Hamas on the attack. And also we have another group of Houthis in Yemen that were also firing, trying to fire rockets at Israel and attacking Israel from the south. So we are. It's not an easy situation, but also I can say that the people in Israel are really united, as I mentioned before, and we are ready. We are ready for any development. I think we were caught by surprise by the Hamas attack. This also has to be said. And
Why?
Well,
yeah, a
we
lot of
will
people in
need-
the comments are asking, how is it that a country that prides itself on a really, really extraordinary intelligence service, were people just starting to lull themselves into a false sense of security? Because for a while there was the ceasefire everyone's now calling for. For the longest time, there was this idea that Israel was, getting along okay with its neighbors.
We were talking on this very show, actually, we were talking about, because on the 15th of September, the signing of normalization with Saudi Arabia. I mean, we've been talking about Abraham Accords. We've been talking about a loosening of aggression around the region.
Yeah.
And then seemingly out of nowhere.
Well, probably
And
as a result of those
because we
people
just
being
had the
pushed.
intelligence conversation.
Yeah.
Was there intelligence and was it ignored?
Well, these questions are being asked in Israel as well.
Yeah.
But what according to in our sort of in our way, when you have a war, you fight the war. You start investigating and asking these questions
In
after
peace.
the war.
After
the war, and there is going to be a very thorough investigation in what has happened. Very thorough, and there will be conclusions, and I'm sure the leaders of Israel will take the responsibility for what has happened. This definitely is going to take place.
What about the propaganda war? I mean, that's another thing entirely. We're watching people all over the world who are now taking sides. We've seen these big protests in most of the Western world's capitals. We've seen it in places as disparate as Sydney and London, New York and Vancouver, where people have taken to the streets, mostly in those places, very vocal supporters of, they say, Palestine. Some will go further and say Hamas.
And lots of calls for a ceasefire.
Yeah. Yeah. Massive, just an unconditional ceasefire because human lives. Clearly, these people have no idea how war works, but what do you think of the state of the propaganda war? And especially in this country, whether there is any support at all for Israel, because it seems very muted in response to the Palestinians' support all over the world. Is this just a coordinated propaganda war on their part? Or is it a proper blooming of genuine groundswell support?
Well, I think an interesting illustration of what has happened and what you were asking about, I think we could see in the what has happened with the Al-Ali hospital.
Yeah, which was a complete fake news story.
It was a complete fake news story. And it was interesting to see that right after the missile has fell, the Hamas missile fell on the hospital. So there were two responses. The Israeli response was, we need to check what exactly has happened. We will investigate and come back. The Hamas response was, it was an Israeli missile and 500 people have died. So straight away, minutes after the missile fell, they knew exactly whom to blame and how many victims there were.
And it was, of course, complete nonsense.
It was complete nonsense.
And it was the story turned within a space of hours. And amazingly, major international news publications, including the New York Times and other papers of record and sources of, unabashed mainstream news, were proven to be incorrect. Very few of them even issued apologies after finding out the actual facts of the story. It's maddening. This is a propaganda war that I'm talking about.
Absolutely. That's why I brought it up, because, you have two sources of information here. Israel, which is a democratic state, and Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. So in this case, like in many others, everybody picks up what the Hamas says. And Israel information is being doubted. And that's a very, very sad situation. And now we still can see it. There are reports about For example, I was asked many times why Israel does not supply any more water to Gaza.
Yes.
No, and the
And
water supply has been
electricity and-
resumed. And the water supply has been resumed a few days after the 7th of October. So there is no, it's simply not true. And there are again, Israel, there were a lot of complaints, still are, about fuel supply. Why Israel does not permit fuel supply to Gaza? But people don't ask themselves, because the Hamas every day fires dozens of rockets on Israel.
But
And to fire rockets, you
need
need
fuel.
you need a launch site, absolutely, and you need thousands of liters of fuel.
Wonder
So
where that's
they
coming
have the
from.
fuel
So-
for the launching site, but not for the
These
hospital.
people who
But-
are
and
asking
this-
you, they actually want Israel to supply the fuel to
That's going to-
destroy Israel. I mean, it's just the most bizarre circular argument I've ever heard in my life.
But
Yeah,
this is
so-
also what I'm talking about when just about the clickbaitiness of this particular situation is where people are fueled by the clickbait and the anger. That's kind of what draws everybody's joy and attention, as it were, particularly on social media, because in those areas it's unregulated. People can say and do as they please.
Yeah, and fake news is the order of the day.
But I'm wondering then what will become of the Abraham Accords, because this was kind of a piece of diplomacy that for a long time was seen as something that could bring stability in that region. Is it over?
No, I don't think it's over, and I think the strategic interests of all the members, all the parties to the Abraham Accord are still there, and there is still an interest to pursue, and we still have diplomatic relations with all the members of the Abraham Accord. So I don't think that the Abraham Accord have completed it has completed its mission. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think we are still there, and there are difficulties. That's true, but I don't think we are over it. Not at all.
Speaking of missions, though, you started by saying that when you took this mission, you knew that it was difficult and it was going to be a hard slog, and it was about trying to build better relationships between our two nations. What, in the space of where we are right now, what is your current hope for where South Africa and Israel's diplomatic relations could go?
Well, I think what is very important is to have an open dialogue. I think this is the key. And I think this is in the interest of Israel. And that's what we are aiming at. And I think if we will be able to have this open dialogue and have talks with each other, I think perhaps many of misunderstandings that exist now will be clarified. And I think this is what I'm aiming at.
Funny, that reminds me of a Zulu saying that the saying is "Izinto zoniwa umlomo." You ruin things by speaking, but you also fix them. Ziphinde zilungiswe ngomlomo. So you also fix them by speaking. So I too hope that the dialogue remains open.
Yeah. Look, this is not going to go away anytime soon. And for Israel, it is a very, very tough question. For the people of Gaza, it's a very tough question. And let's be clear, you don't have to be the sort of person who takes delight in someone else's suffering in order to have a side in this. In fact, the best position to occupy is that any human suffering is regrettable. But this is a state of war, and it is not a state of war that Israel asked for. This was not started by them suddenly because they decided they wanted to go in and attack Gaza. Everything was perfectly peaceful the day before the 7th of October. I don't know how it's going to be resolved, neither do you, Ambassador. I hope in terms of South African and Israeli relations that we can establish some sort of détente and accord going forward, because obviously it is beneficial to the world that countries do talk to each other, as Phumi says. all I can say at this point is I've made it very clear what my position is here. I'm pro-civilization. I'm pro people being able to live in peaceful societies and not have indiscriminate attacks upon civilians who are trying to live their lives in any part of the world. What is going on in this particular situation is obviously very complicated, and we'll continue to see propaganda coming from the pro-Palestinian lobby. We can already see it. It seems very coordinated. We also see Israel trying to get its own propaganda out there. But it's going to be a difficult thing to negotiate. And I think the more information we have, sometimes the more complex it even looks.
I told you.
Yeah.
We're going to stay confused, at least a little bit more intelligent in our confusion after this conversation.
But my thoughts are with the people of Israel and the people of Gaza, because frankly, as far as I'm concerned, this is a point of ignition for wars that can spread much further than that area. And I think none of us are in favor of that happening.
Absolutely. I think any loss of human lives, it doesn't matter who it is a terrible thing. Absolutely terrible. And I think we really don't want to cause any loss in lives or any
Is
other...
it true, just incidentally, is it true that Israel's opened up a humanitarian corridor for people who want to flee from the north of Gaza to the south of Gaza, where it is safer, where they're not trying to get rid of the Hamas leadership that is so entrenched in Gaza City, that they've opened up these corridors? Because again, we're not seeing a lot of this in the press.
No, of course. Actually, every time before an attack takes place on a certain area, the citizens are informed. The problem is that the Hamas is hiding behind the people of Gaza. They're hiding in hospitals, they're hiding in mosques, they're hiding in schools. We could see their infrastructure. The main bunker of the Hamas is actually under the Shifa hospital, which is the biggest hospital in Gaza, which was built, by the way, by Israelis. And they are just hiding underneath because they know we are not going to attack hospitals.
It's astounding for me. I keep trying to figure out if the information that they have been planning these attacks for 2 years, that they have built all these tunnels, that they have stockpiled all this weaponry, the same skill set required to build the tunnels is the same skill set required to build bunkers.
And bomb shelters.
And why not plan for that? Why not plan? Because again, everybody knows Israel's stance is if you come at us, we're coming back. So Hamas knew that Israel would retaliate. And yet there was no planning in place for what would happen to the civilians.
Hamas are not hiding the ball. They're not telling us that they're doing one thing and doing another. They've been very clear about, and if nothing else, they've been completely honest, Ambassador, about what they've wanted to do.
Absolutely. And also there was an interesting...
this is not a surprise. In other words, all those people all over the world are like, oh, can't believe Hamas did this. They've been telling us what they want to do for years.
Right. And there was an interesting interview with Musa Abu Marzouk, who was one of the leaders of the Hamas. And he said, the tunnels are for the Hamas. The people above the tunnels are 75% of them are refugees. I mean, this is his words, not mine.
Yeah, he said that it's the UN's responsibility.
It's UN's responsibility. It's not the Hamas responsibility, according to him. And, at the end of the day, the Hamas could let the people of Gaza go into the tunnels. You know how many lives they would save by letting them get into the tunnels. But the problem is that the Hamas, and I think that's the tragedy of it, they are sacrificing death. They are educating children of Gaza on hatred. And there are very many examples that show them. And this is a very sad reality that the people of Gaza are going through. And I think it should be a really top priority for the international community to actively intervene and get the Hamas out of Gaza, because it's going to be it's an Israeli problem, but it's not only an Israeli problem; it's an international problem.
All right, well, good luck. I do not envy your task at the moment. I think things are probably at an all-time low in terms of relations between this country of ours and Israel, even if you don't have to say it, Ambassador.
The
and-
man's not ruffled. Look at
No,
this.
he's calm as he's cool as a cucumber, which is remarkable. But thank you for coming to see us this morning. It's there's plenty in the main. For those people in the comment section are saying this sounds a little bit one-sided. Well, there are 100 media organizations in South Africa that you can go and follow if you want to hear the other side of the story. There are only there's just us.
No one is carrying this side of the story. So we're glad you woke up
we're
and
filling-
drove all this
yeah.
way this morning.
Filling a gap in here.
Very
So,
early
yeah,
morning.
Very good. All right. And there's lots that we could still unpack based on what we spoke to Jasmine about earlier, but we're going to have to leave it for now. Ambassador, thank you so much for coming to see us. Pums, thank you very much. We will see you next Thursday for the Burning Platform, and we'll see you tomorrow morning for cliffcentral.com's morning show. Thanks.